Good evening, folks, and welcome back to another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Colby Evans, a.k.a. Star Park Car from Twitter, and we have a big show for you guys today. Our race review, my weekend review of my home track ARCA race at Iowa, where we have our first combo race of the season for the ARCA and ARCA East series, and also previewing the main series return to one of the bigger tracks on the ARCA circuit, Pocono. So yeah, big show for you guys today. We're going to let a couple more people file in here. I'm going to go through my little intro, go through at the beginning of every podcast, and we will jump right into the ARCA action. So you guys know the drill. Follow me on social media, on Twitter at Starting Park Car for all ARCA tweets, lower budget team tweets, all that fun crap. You guys know I love to tweet. Like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for all notifications. We're now just surpassed over 1,200 subs. So again, thank you all for your continued support. And give a special check out to theracingexperts.com. They are the official NASCAR media website of this channel. So let's get right into it, shall we? Iowa, my home track, and I will forever beg NASCAR to go back there. Know why we left? It's a beautiful facility and a very fun track. Just glad ARCA goes there. It's not shocking as to why, in case you guys were wondering maybe some of the reasons why ARCA still goes to Iowa. The Menards Corporation, which sponsors the ARCA Racing Series, their most successful store by far is actually in Clive, Iowa. In fact, the one in Altoona is in the top 5 most successful Menard stores. So 2 of the top 5 Menard stores that bring in the most income are actually in Iowa. So I would imagine that's got something to do with it. The fact that Menards would want to race in Iowa, considering their highest financially successful stores are actually in Iowa. Not sure if that's the exact reason, but I would have to imagine that that's one of the reasons, especially, like I said, because Clive, I go to that one all the time with my dad. So I have to imagine that's one of the reasons why we still go to Iowa. But I'm glad we do, nonetheless. It sucks that it's the only stock car race at Iowa, but I'm glad we have one nonetheless. So as you guys know, I was there with Brad Smith Motorsports. It was a fun weekend. We were there with the Ford. The Chevrolet is taking a much-needed break. It's pretty much beat to crap. I cannot stress that enough. And this would be the first full race attempt for the new Ford. And, as you guys saw I put out on Twitter, that car means a lot to me. And to everyone who watches this podcast, you guys need to really understand the significance of that Ford. That was the last car to come out of the James Hilton shop. It was a former Goodson racing car that Hilton had purchased in 2017. And the last race it was ran under for James Hilton was that fateful race at Talladega in 2018. Of course, a day later, we would lose James, and his son, Brad Smith, would take over the 48 team. But that car, over a period of 5 years, has been restored, repainted, and is now running again. So I hope you guys can really understand the significance of that race car. You guys need to understand that race car means a lot to me. I'm a big James Hilton fan. I've made that very clear in this channel. That car really means a lot to me. Be able to work on a chassis the last car, the very last chassis that came out of the James Hilton shop, that meant a lot to me. So Iowa as a whole, we went over on last week's show. Not the biggest car count, especially considering it was a combo race, but we had a lot of teams that had originally planned to enter, not show up. At the last minute, we lost the 43 and the 45 of Jalen Mack and Tony Cosentino. We were going to have 22 cars. They both withdrew due to sponsors kind of, playing games. It's that old thing in the racing business, sponsors playing games with race teams. The 74 of Mandy Chick, this was originally on her planned schedule, but she didn't show. The one of Jake Finch, this was on his original schedule, but he didn't show. Greg Van Als was supposed to run full-time, but then backed out after Charlotte due to frustrations with the series and Xfinity deals that he was able to get. A couple more cars. I think Eric Caudell had originally planned to come to Iowa as well if the money was there. The 55 Venturini entry was scheduled to come as well with Tony Breidinger behind the wheel, but because of Sean Hingorani's suspension, they just went ahead and moved Connor Jones from the 25 to the 15 and moved Tony Breidinger from the 55 to the 25, and then just did not bring the 55. So when you add in all those cars that I just mentioned, we were looking at about a 25 to 26 car field. which for Iowa would have been perfect. It would have been a really, really good field of cars to run. Unfortunately, with down to 20, I'm not saying the race was bad. I think we kind of all figured on who was going to run well, who was going to run up front, who was going to battle for the win. But at the end of the day, the one thing I stress in this series is, yes, the cars that I just listed might not be winning race cars, but at the end of the day, their body's on track. And I feel like that's one thing that this series does lack a little bit. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. But it improves the racing is what I'm trying to say. When you have those two Cosentino cars, who will run mid-pack. They're not going to win, but they're going to run solid mid-pack. Same with the 55 Venturini car. It's not a race-winning car, but Tony would go up there and probably run top 10, top 5, like she did in the race itself. Greg Fenhaus, top 10 car. Mandy Chick, mid-pack, top 10 car. More bodies out there. That's what improves the racing. So the fact that we didn't have that and we only had 20, knowing that we also had a couple of starting parks from Fast Track Racing, and that's not a knack on Fast Track Racing. We just kind of figured that a couple of cars from them would, pull in early. It meant that we just weren't going to get that many full race cars to put on the best show, if that makes sense. So in a sense right there, it did suck. And, we had some people still trying to say like, man, the motor differences, from all these cars. I feel like a lot of people still don't understand. Some people might not even realize that ARCA is on a spec engine program with Ilmor and running Yates motors. Some people might still think that ARCA is still in the days of running old Cup Series motors, which in some ways I wish we were still in. But I feel like there's a lot of the fan base that does not realize that almost every car in the field is not running the same motor, not even close. Venturinis are on Ilmors. Some guys are running the Yates motor. Hillenberg cars are running D3 motors. Brad is running an SC motor. I mean, they're all different motors. So a lot of them had different power of what they still got in it. And our budgets don't miss those days. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's true. That's true. I mean, yeah, the days of old Cup motors were still not cheap. That too. But you know what I mean. So motors in the ARC series have always been expensive. But I've never liked the idea of going anything spec. And I've made that opinion very clear. I don't like spec stuff. So, but nonetheless, we still had 20 cars. Some oddball entries. We had Fast Track bringing 5 cars. We had the 0-1 of Brayton Laster, one of the pizza men of the series. Next, Danny Jankowiak. Alex Clubb was back in his 0-3. LeVar Scott from the East series was making a main series start. Timothy Monroe, always good to see Tim. Hard-working. He's a hard-working SOB. That's what he is. Tim Monroe's awesome. Good old Zachary Tinkle in the 11. Matt Kemp returning from Berlin. Like I said, Connor Jones was moved to the 15 due to Sean Hinkarani's suspension. So therefore, the 25 was then just taken over by Tony Breidinger, and the 55 was not entered. Luke Fenhaus, of course, in the 28 from the East Series. Frankie Muniz in the team. They did show up last minute, but they were on the entry list. They were one of the final entries. It's kind of another thing to note when we saw the list of entry orders. Brad Smith, John Garrett, Scott Melton returning for the first time since 2021. And, of course, Dale Shear from the East Series as well. So 20 cars. Again, not the most strongest field that Iowa's had, but still a solid field nonetheless. For us, the good news is that with this Ford being a lot more new, it doesn't have a lot of races on it. It doesn't have a lot of damage to it yet. We kind of got right in there. We got right into tech. We had to go to I love how Brad, you work for a guy who's been in the business too long. Brad still calls the tires Hoosier. He says, we got to run over to Hoosier and air up the tires. And at this point, it's been so long, I just don't correct him anymore. I don't correct him. I just go along with it. I know what he's talking about. Obviously, it means General Tire, but it's funny how it's literally been hard to believe it's been almost 10 years since ARCA's left Hoosier. But I find it funny how Brad still says Hoosier after all this time, even though we're clearly on General Tires. So I just run along with it at this point. So we go over to Hoosier, General Tire. Still great tire. Love General Tire, by the way. Get tires aired up, turn the car around, get in the tech line. Architect, it might not be these cool scanning stations that NASCAR has, but man, don't think that these Architect guys don't take it seriously. Obviously, on cars like ours, they let a couple of things slide by that normally they wouldn't on some of the big cars. Trust me, I mean, when they're teching the Venturini cars and the Gibbs car, I mean, they are checking over every single spec. So I appreciate that. Like, ARCA Tech is taken seriously. Yes, they might be a little bit easier on us, a little bit easier on Fast Track Racing, Dale Shear, but they still take it seriously. And, it's one thing you can't undeny about the series. It is still taken 100% seriously. We're not a joke of a series. So we finally get through tech. The sad part was, though, is that there was only 3 of us. Me, Brad, and our spotter. So, unfortunately, during tech, Brad and the spotter had to go to the driver and spotter meeting. So, there's lonely old me having to do tech all by myself. Now, I don't do this every week, and this was the first time I was working on the Ford, so I don't know any parts on this car at all. I had really kind of gotten myself used to the Chevrolet, so I knew where everything was on the car. So if we needed to unscrew something or take something off, I knew exactly where it was, and I knew which tool to grab. This car, I had no idea where anything was. It looked about the same, but, difference in motors. So the officials are looking at me as if I know what to do, and I'm looking at them as if they know what to do. We both don't know what to do. So we're sitting in tech line, and I'm just standing at them like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So I just start grabbing stuff, and mercifully we get the carburetor, the airbox off, get the carburetor off, get the plate on, finally put the carburetor back on. It was a funny mess. It was a funny mess. Brad and the spotter finally returned from the meeting, and we finally get through tech. It's like, it's when you're by yourself there and you don't do this weekly, man, sometimes you just panic. So that was a funny moment there. Practice gets going. Our plan was to kind of let the guys go by because we had an IndyCar test, and the track was still heavily rubbered in from that IndyCar test, and we wanted to let the fast guys get that General Tire rubber in there, so that way, Brad, people don't realize when you're on different rubber compounds, the track can be very different. So Brad wanted to make sure that the track was good. We were running on 65-lap tires, so it's not like we were running on anything special. 65-lap tires. Again, shout out to General Tire. Their tires can take a beating, run well over 300 laps, no problems. So shout out to General Tire for actually really building a quality race tire. We were trying to get out on track. Nobody can hear each other. So we realized, crap, radio's not working. So Brad has to get out of the car. We get another radio. Brad's hookup isn't working. So instead, we go old school and just screw on an antenna. We can finally hear each other. Great, good. Shut the hood, gets in, window nets up. Window nets suck. Race fans, until you have to pull up a window net, you will never, iCarly reference, you will never realize how hard it is just to get those window nets up. They absolutely suck. So we get them up, fires up the car, throttle's sticking. I can hear it. I can tell. Brad can tell. So he turns the car back off, gets out. He's hot. I mean, he is mad. So I just lift the hood, and we basically go to town. We go to town on the springs. Springs aren't set correctly. 5 minutes later, we're down to the last 10 minutes of practice. Get the car finally where it's supposed to be. Get the car in, and he finally gets out on track with 95 seconds to go. We mercifully make 3 laps, and we're ironically not the slowest. Even in the 3 laps of practice that we managed to run, we were still not the slowest, which was actually, in my opinion, still quite an accomplishment. We were actually 17th of 20th. We were ahead of the 31 of Rita Goulet, the 98 of Dale Shear, and the 06 of AJ Moyer. Although AJ had a flat tire during practice, he didn't have time to really get up to speed because he had a flat tire, and they had to spend the rest of practice into qualifying searching for a different set of tires. So I guess I kind of give the 06 a pass because, I mean, they didn't have a chance to get up to speed. The tire went down. He didn't blow a tire, just went down. And so they were searching for another set of tires. They did get another set. As for other practice, we also had some incidents in practice. The 6 of LeVar Scott literally caught on fire in pit road and yet was back on track 15 minutes later. One of the weirdest things. Usually I figured, the driver's got to go to the care center or they got to clean up the car. Nope, just do a minor clean job, send him back out 15 minutes later. So that was kind of odd. Other than that, went pretty smoothly. A lot of the cars did not run a lot of laps. A lot of the fast track cars didn't. The 12, the 10 only ran 3 laps each. We only ran 3 laps. Laster, he only ran 6 laps. Tinkle and Garrett, we would come to find out, the only full race entries. Even then, they didn't run a huge amount of laps. Nobody really ran a lot of laps in practice. The car that ran the most laps in practice was LeVar Scott at 30. Actually, it was Rita Goulet at 49, and she was still 4 seconds off. But yeah, she ran the most laps, and then it was LeVar Scott, the second most competitive car, who ran the most laps. Unshockingly, William Sawalich was fastest in practice. Luke Fenhaus was second. Those were my picks, if you guys remember on last week's podcast. William Sawalich was my race winner's pick, and Luke Fenhaus was my dark horse pick, because a track like this, old tires, sliding around, multiple grooves, it fit Fenhaus's driving style perfectly. So Brad gets out of the car, looks over the motor. Everything's fine. Spotter's staying up there for the rest of the day, so it's just kind of me and him now. So we get him back in, and Brad wants to be the first out there for qualifying. It's a time session. You can go out there whenever you want. And Brad just wants to be the first car out there, get a lap in, and then just call it a day. That was kind of our plan. So he went out there for qualifying. We didn't even try. We were, let's see here. We were 12 seconds off the pole. Yes. Trust me, we were not trying. Brad's not that slow. He ran his 2 laps, came in, parked it. We then realized, though, unfortunately, we did not have a catch can for the race. So I'll get to that in a second, but we did not have a catch can for the race. So, 19 of the 20 cars took a qualifying lap. Not really sure who didn't make a qualifying. Oh, it was who didn't make a qualifying run? Oh, yeah. Wait, no. I can't tell. Looking at the qualifying list, I can't tell off the top of my head. But unshockingly, William Sawalich won the pole. Again, it wasn't really a shocker. He beat the field by 0.4 of a second. Luke Fenhaus was second. LeVar Scott was third. Tony Breidinger, I'm telling you, Tony Breidinger, for all the crap that she's gotten, I have said it this entire season, ever since Phoenix, she has improved dramatically. I mean, way more than we've ever seen Natalie Decker or Amber Balkin ever improve. Tony Breidinger has improved a ton. Qualifying 4th place, outrunning Jessie Love, her teammate, in qualifying. Very impressive. Andres Perez de Lara, Connor Jones, the fastest Venturini car. That is very impressive out of Tony or Breidinger. I pronounce it Breidinger if that's not correct. Sorry, but very impressed with her speed, man. And throughout the race, too, very impressed with Tony's speed. Frankie Muniz, Christian Rose, John Garrett run out the top 10. Frankie Muniz was actually running an old Fusion car, which is kind of weird. I did not expect them to run a Fusion. I didn't even know if they still had Fusions. I figured Rhett Jones had still had all of their Mustang bodies, but I guess they chose to run a Fusion for this race. Definitely not one of their best performances in this race was Rhett Jones Racing, but I think it's kind of because they were running this race on a bare skin budget for the race as well. So we finally get into the race. Some little bit more side notes. I was a one-man pit crew. We had Brad in the car, Spotter up on the spotter stand, and me in the pits. No tires. We didn't even have a gas cart. I'll just tell you this. We didn't even have a gas cart. I had to carry the fuel cans to pit road. Full. Was not very fun. It was more fun when they were done, when they were empty, but we didn't have a gas cart. So that was fun. Luckily, we don't have the full-size NASCAR fuel cans, which would weigh about 90 pounds. These ones only weighed about 40, but it still sucked. The fun of working for a low-budget team. You got to love it. You got to love it. I do love it. I genuinely do love it. I'm not trying to joke there. I genuinely do love it. So Yeah, all we had were pretty much fuel cans. That was our pit box. My pit box seat for the race was a cooler, about as old school as you can get. So I had drinks down there for myself, an adjustment wrench, and fuel cans. That was our pit stall. And yeah, like I said before, no catch can. And unfortunately, there's not many cars in the series that still run catch cans. Us, the 03 and the 98 were the only guys who were running catch cans. And the 03 was running the whole distance. And the 98 was still iffy on if they were going to run the whole race. They said we could use theirs if we needed it, or if they pulled in early, which they did. But we just kind of went old school with it. At the end of the day, we found the fattest, longest flathead screwdriver and just stuffed that guy right in the catch can hole and for it to vent, and then put the fuel in. So we went old school right there, and the officials weren't the happiest about it. But what are you going to do? It's all we got. Because if you don't allow the tank to vent, all that fuel is just going to splash out back at you. That's kind of how the catch can system works. And I really hope there's not somebody watching this show who asks me, what is a catch can? Please don't. You'll make me feel old. You'll make everybody watching this show feel old. So I really hope everyone who watches this podcast knows what a catch can is. Because, man, that was – I know it's been a long time. It's been a long time. It's been since 2010 that NASCAR's done the catch can system. But I really hope not everyone's forgotten about it. Because, man, that was a fun time when we had all those pit road guys. So we finally get to the race itself. Race gets going. I mean, and unshockingly, again, we kind of figured on who was going to be up front. Sawalich, Fenhaus, they easily check out in the beginning as 1 and 2 and pretty much stay that way for most of the day. Again, as much as I'm trying to watch the race, I'm also kind of watching our car go by and watching the back markers go by, because at the end of the day, Brad, with his speed, we were actually on par with the 06 and on par with the 31 and on the 98. So the goal for this race was actually to, instead of just riding around and making laps, actually try to stay ahead of them. So it's kind of funny. One of the very few times you will actually see Brad Smith battling for a position on track competitively. We were right there with the 06 on speed, and we were faster than the 98 and the 31. So we were definitely not out there just making laps. Brad was actually out there really battling for position. So I was kind of keeping more of an eye on on our car more than the leaders, but I wasn't missing. The 18 out to a huge lead. The 28 was right, kind of about a couple seconds the whole race. The gap really didn't increase that much or decrease that much. It's like the 18 could pull out to about I don't know what you guys would call it, about a 1.5 second lead. Then 28 would close down to about a second, maybe 0.7 of a second. Then it would open back up and close back down, open back up, close back down. It was interesting. It was interesting on how that all worked out. So that they were going by. 3rd through 6th was kind of the big story. You had Jesse Love, LeVar Scott, Breidinger, and DeLar all battling with each other. And I was just extremely surprised. But I guess I shouldn't be with how well she's done this year. But Breidinger is running ahead of both rev cars. She's running ahead of both rev cars, and she's actually side by side with her teammate, the man who has won so many races this year and is the points leader. And Breidinger is competitively running right with him and passes him on track. And I'm saying to myself in the pit stop, I am thoroughly impressed. This is arguably the most competitive woman driver we have seen in ARCA, and I'm next to Shauna Robinson. Now, I know it's like people are like, oh, it's kind of a dumb take, but it's like, come on. It's right there. I really start to say that she is probably the most competitive ARCA driver I have seen outside of Shauna Robinson. Can't really – let's see here. Who else besides Shauna Robinson is racing Shauna Robinson? We had Christy Passmore, Michelle Theriault, Taylor Ferns. You might be having an issue with the audio. Am I breaking up? Dog, dang it. Can you guys hear me? People in the chat, if you're watching the show right now, can you please let me know, can you hear me? Sorry if my audio is breaking up. Let me know in the chat right now. You can hear me? All right. Looks like we're getting some yes. Okay, so Christian, I'm sorry if you're having audio issues. All right, sorry about that, guys. We can hear you. All right. All right, so what we were saying, yeah. So let's see. We had Christy Passmore, Michelle Terrio, Taylor Ferns. Now we have Natalie Decker, Amber Balkin. What other female drivers am I missing from that's ran in ARCA? What I'm trying to say is, though, is that I haven't been this impressed with a female driver since Shauna Robinson. Shauna Robinson was awesome. But I am thoroughly impressed with how Tony Breidinger has done. And the fact that she went up there and passed her teammates, was the most competitive Venturini car out there for quite a while. That's something you can't like joke about. Like, that's thorough talent. That's raw talent. Very impressed, especially considering with where she started when she was not the most competitive to where she is now. I don't know if she was also driving hard because it was, it was her birthday the previous day. She had turned 24. So that was kind of cool. They had a big party for her in the garage area, which was also fun. Come on, Billy in the chat. Don't feel old. Shauna Robinson was awesome. Don't feel old. All right. It was just a bygone era. Shauna Robinson was awesome. For the people who never got to see Shauna Robinson race live, you really missed one of the few women in the sport, I would say, next to Danica Patrick, who could actually wheel a stock car and just never really got that chance. Danica got that chance, but Shauna did not. Am I going to Pocono Raceway? No. If I could, I would, but unfortunately, I'm not. So, yeah, back to the race. Sawalich is leading. Fenhaus is second. The great battle from third to sixth. And then you kind of had, Connor Jones. He was kind of floating around in that top five battle. Then you had Christian Rose, Frankie Muniz. They were in their own battle. Frankie Muniz had an amazing save in that first run after nearly getting turned by the 32, but he saved it. So you had the 32 and the 30 kind of running by themselves. And then you had the two fast track cars that were running the whole race, running with each other, the 11 and the 66. You had Scott Melton kind of running kind of in between them. So you kind of had these cars that were starting to get separated. Then you had the 03 by himself. Then you had the 06, 48, 31, the 98, and then the three fast track starting parks kind of all around each other. So, and I don't think they were pushing that hard, obviously, because they weren't planning to run the whole distance. And in that first run, they started to pull off. Brayton Laster, I don't believe he had intended to only run 19 laps. I think they said although he wasn't planned to run the whole race, I believe Laster did pull off early because of a legit problem with the car. Because it kind of shocked me when I saw him coming down pit road. And I'm like, that's it? Brayton had gotten all those sponsors on the car. I was kind of shocked that it had only lasted that long. So I do believe it was a legit problem with the car because I know he wasn't planning to run the whole race, but I figured he would have ran a lot more than he did. So unfortunately, the 01 was the first to pull off after 19 laps. We did have a caution in that period. 69 of Scott Melton spun. Luckily, didn't hit the wall. So Kimmel Racing had to use up a set of tires in the first 11 laps. They actually went and bought a second set of tires, which I didn't know you could do. I did not know you could buy tires mid-race, especially in ARCA. So they went and bought another set of tires. We had another caution, the 98. I'm not sure I think the 98 got spun. The 98 got spun either by himself. Again, I literally was right in front of me, but I turned my head, and all of a sudden the 98 spun around. Then the 31's laying up against the wall. So by that point, though, the 12 had pulled off after 29 laps. Dale Shear, he would run only a couple more laps before I think he probably just decided to call it a day. He pulled off after 30 laps. We had another spin a couple laps later for the 31 of Rita Goulet. For the 31 of Rita Goulet, who unfortunately, who had a rough race. The car kind of sounded iffy all weekend, to be honest with you. Their motor sounds a lot more different than others. And of course, Rita still slow, not the fastest. I mean, we were running a second and a half a lap faster than her, which I don't know what to say to that. I want to be positive about it, but running a second and a half slower than Brad Smith, it's just, I always kind of said Brad is the baseline. If you're slower than us by a lot, you need a little bit more seasoning. Although I will say this was one of our better performances because we actually had a decent car for once. The Chevrolet probably would have been slower than what the Ford was running for sure. So she spun again. We ran 14 laps of the first break. So this is where I got my first taste of action. So yeah, and I had no fuel stands too. So, when you're picking up a fuel can, when they say that second man that hands you the can to help steady yourself, that man is so important. Trying to get one of those gas cans right off the ground, full, right up onto your shoulders, it's not easy. I learned that the hard way. So I dragged the fuel can over the wall, shoved the screwdriver in the catch can vent, hoist a couple times, took me a couple times, the fuel can up, and it's an old school method. It's not the way that they fuel today. So you have to have the fuel can in perfectly straight, not at an angle, left or right. It's got to be in perfectly straight. And unfortunately, what did I do? Put it in an angle. So what happened? The gas splashed out at me. And then we had a small spill. Nothing too serious. I mean, maybe just your average small fuel spill. Got it in. The thing, though, is that with those cans is, and the cans of today, there's a small clear tube where you can see gas running back up into the can. That lets you know when the car is full. With this style fuel setup, we don't have that. So I'm just standing there with the can in, and I don't know when to stop because I can't tell when the can's empty. It's like, well, doesn't the weight go down? When all that adrenaline is in you for this pit stop, you can't tell when the fuel can is heavier or lighter. So I pretty much just counted in my head to 20, and I'm just assuming, okay, after 20 seconds, all this fuel should be in. And when I stopped, shook the can, I'm like, yeah, this sucker is empty. So then did a run around the top car, checked the tires, gave Brad a drink of water, and he went back on his way. And then we started the second stage. Again, not much of the same. Kind of gloss through the second stage here. Not much of the same here. We had another Scott Melton spin. Other than that, the second stage was pretty clean. The 28 was definitely, again, not like a second and a half off the 18 about the whole race. It was clear that if the 18 made any mistakes, the 28 would pounce. But it was also clear that the 18 was the class of the field. Jesse Love, who we kind of expected to be a little bit more competitive in this race, really wasn't. He didn't run really any higher than third. Showed no potential of catching the 28 or the 18. No potential of catching either of them. And was pretty much stuck battling his teammate Tony and the two Rev cars and his other teammate 15 of Connor Jones. Also by this point, Tim Monroe had pulled off, leaving us the 16 cars that were going to run the full race. We also had a spin on track for the 06 of AJ Moyer. Again, AJ, they're running that Toyota, man. AJ's kind of had some tough last couple races, but, you got to cut him a break. It's his first time at all these tracks. So obviously the lack of experience has got to play a factor. And, you're also driving a car that overall is not the best. Not the best. We'll say I love Wayne Peterson, but it's not the best car in the field, obviously. So got to cut him some slack there. Second stage again, breezed by pretty fast. Nothing too serious other than the 69 spin. And it was the second pit stop where if you guys were following along with me on Twitter, you could really tell that I was not in the best stage. Again, shoved the screwdriver in there. Got the can up. This time it went a little bit worse. Inserted it in perfectly this time, but the screwdriver was not in all the way as I thought it was. So I go to put the can in, and all the fuel just splashes out on me. And the apron, I did have an apron on, but it wasn't tightly around me. It was kind of a little bit loose. And my leg was hanging out on the apron. The apron had kind of fallen off my leg. All that racing fuel spilled onto my leg. And even wearing that fire suit, it burnt like, I'll be honest with you guys, it burnt like a bitch. It hurt so bad. Got the can back in, shoved the screwdriver in. I'm fueling this car. My leg is on fire. I get the pit stop done, put the can down, and I am just screaming in my helmet. I don't want to tell anyone because I don't want to go to the infield care center. I'm the only crew guy. So I open the cooler, grab a chunk of ice, and just stuff it right on my leg for about 5 minutes. It hurt so bad, guys. I cannot tell you. Racing fuel is hot. It burns. It hurts. It just made for a long rest of the day. I gutted it out, toughed it out. When I was changing my clothes after the race, I had a large red spot on my leg. Oh, guys, it was fun. It was fun, but it was rough. It was fun, but it was definitely rough. I do want to do a quick. I've been seeing some more people saying about sound. Can you guys still hear me properly? And we've been having some. I don't know why we're having audio issues. I don't even have a microphone plugged in. We're using the microphone from my computer. So can you guys all still hear me? Okay. I want to ask some people in the chat real quick. You guys still hear me? Okay. I don't know why we're having audio issues. If we are, all good. Okay. So I'll continue. So you into the final run again. Just looked like smooth sailing for the 18. Not really much to talk about because by this point the 18 had pulled away by a good 2 seconds this time. Definitely by a good 2 seconds. He definitely had the win in hand. 28 was not going to run him down. By this point, the battle for third through sixth kind of settled down as well. Jesse Love had made his way up to third. LeVar and DeLara were fourth and fifth. Breidinger had fallen to sixth. Connor Jones was seventh. The race had kind of stabilized. Everyone was kind of stabilizing where they were. I was starting to pack up. I had took apart the fuel cans, took apart everything, kind of packed up the pit box. And then unfortunately, with 2 laps to go, Brad says on the radio, car shut off. Now, I thought we had run out of gas, so my heart sank. I'm like, oh, God, did I just ruin the race for us? We would come out to find out later it was an ignition problem, so my heart was spared because I would have felt really bad if I was the cause of our DNF. So Brad just came to the pit box, parked it, which was disappointing because we were actually running 14th, and with the laps that we lost 14th to the 06, who would finish 14th, and we were classified 15th. So that was our race, but I didn't want to walk back to the garage area. I wanted to watch the finish real quick. And, I was thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, man, we saw what happened at Nashville. If Luke could just get a better restart than the 18, he's got a chance here. And sure enough, what happened like Nashville? The 28 got a great restart, side drafted him. The 20 of Jesse Love threw it into the outside. It almost stuck, but then it didn't. But it was enough to get the 28 ahead. And as we know, sometimes, when a car is so good in clean air, once it gets in that dirty air, it drives completely different. And that 18, you could see Sawalich, he threw it into those corners as hard as he could, but Fenhaus knew how to block. Leads the white flag, and he takes the checkered flag. And for the second time this season, Luke Fenhaus steals it from William Sawalich. And at the end of the day, I got to believe it's just the late race restarts. Luke Fenhaus has been doing this a lot longer. He knows how to do those late race restarts better than William Sawalich. And, did I mention how the yellow came out? Yeah, Connor Jones spun. I'm sorry, guys. Thank you, Ryan Falk, in the chat. Connor Jones spun. He lost talent, spun in turn 2. Connor Jones has wrecked a lot this year. But hey, I guess as long as he's paying his crash clause, Venturini doesn't care. So yeah, forgot to mention that. Thank you, Ryan Falk. That's why the caution came out. 15 lost talent, spun in turn 2. He lost a lap. So a good finish for him was gone. So appreciate that, Ryan, in the chat. But yes, that was the reason for the caution, the 2-lap sprint. I will pick it up where we left off. Fenhaus wins. And it's so impressive, man. This Pinnacle Racing Group. I mean, this is a startup team, first year in the game. And right out of the gate, they've shown speed at every race they've been to. This is now their second career E-Series win and first in the main division, which is ultra impressive because you're going up against all the heavy hitters of Venturini. You're going up against a higher class Joe Gibbs car. Very impressive win. And I think it really shows that Fenhaus hopefully will have a future in the sport. Luke Fenhaus wins. William Sawalich, got to be disappointing, man. Second place. Definitely has not won the amount of races that we kind of expected him. There were some people, I remember when we were talking about this at the beginning of the year, there were some people who said that William Sawalich would win every single race he started. I don't even think he's won half of the races he has started this year. So it's definitely not been the season that the 18 team we're looking for. Jesse Love was third. LeVar Scott was fourth. Tony Breidinger, another top 5 finish, so she should be proud of that. Andres Perez de Lara, man, I'm telling you, it's kind of sad. I figured the 2-car would be a little bit more fast this year, but it's clear that they're not putting as much effort into their ARCA program as they were last year. 6th for him. Christian Rose with honestly one of his better runs of the year, 7th. Connor Jones, another, I would say, disappointing run for him, 8th. Frankie Muniz, they just didn't have any speed at all. 9th place for him. John Garrett, 10th. Zachary Tinkle, 11th. Scott Melton probably would have done better. He just lost all those laps with the spins, so he kind of can't help that. Alex Clubb, they had a rough day, but thankfully were able to run the whole race and come home 13th. AJ Moore, 14th. Us, 15th. Rita Goulet, I forgot to mention this. She actually had a driver change. Tim Goulet hopped in the 31. Tim Goulet hopped in the 31 with about 40 laps to go, and they couldn't get the car fired. They were in the pit stall right next to us. So their crew guy, Rita, and I joined in later. We pushed the 31 pretty much the entire length of pit road. Car wouldn't fire, so they were forced to go to the garage. They finally got the car started. And, Tim Goulet actually finished the 31. Rita did not finish that car. It was Tim. So by bug classification, Rita Goulet finishes her second race of the year. Then, of course, Tim Monroe, Dale Shear, Matt Kemp, and Brayton Laster. Like I said, overall, not the best Iowa race. I will definitely say that. ARCA's had better Iowa races. Would I call it bad? No. But would I call it great? I can't be honest with you guys. I can't call it a great race. I would say good in parts, but overall average. I will say overall average. I'll give it a 6 out of 10, mainly just because of that finish. I think had the 18 just dominated and won, my classification would have been even lower. Not the best. Not the best. And I think we can kind of all agree on that. Wasn't the best. Was not bad, but wasn't the best. Still overall had a fun day. And yeah, you live for these days at the track. And and shout out to Andy Hillenberg for feeding us. We didn't have a lot of food, so shout out to Andy Hillenberg for feeding us for their awesome beef and cheese nachos and awesome hot dogs with beef. Andy Hillenberg and his team, they know how to eat. They know how to eat. So shout out to Andy Hillenberg's team for feeding us. That was great food. So that was Iowa. Sawalich, got to be disappointing for him. And Luke Fenhaus, and more importantly, what this does do, it allows him to close on in the championship. Because, yes, we have the main series division. We have the E-Series championship, which now has 3 races left to go. William Sawalich leads by just 11 points. And you got to think, with the combo races coming up at Milwaukee, Bristol, and what's the other one? IRP? Is that the other combo race? Either way, there's 3 left. And you got to think, man, 11 points. Lauren, Zachary's mom. Well, shout out to Lauren, Zachary Tinkle's mom. Thank you. You make awesome food. But yeah, Sawalich, only 11-point lead in the East Championships. Joe Gibbs Racing going for 3 straight East Series championships with 3 different drivers. Can they do it? It might be a little bit harder this year. I would say Fenhaus is going to be a real threat at Bristol. That's going to be the race I'm excited to see Luke Fenhaus at Bristol. They're going to bring their A game for that one. But they're the only contender. LeVar Scott in third is too far back. Zachary Tinkle too far back. Obviously, Sean Hingarani missing the race. He didn't get the 50-point bonus either, so he is way out of it now. That's that for them. I love how Tim Monroe is 5th in points. Gotta love that. So hopefully Tim will start the remaining East races so that way he can finish top 5 in points. That'd be kind of cool for him. But we still have a good race on our hands for the E Series title. Races like I said, like Milwaukee with the combo field, races like Bristol with the combo field. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I would not give the E Series championship to William Sawalich yet. I would definitely say that the 28 has a legit chance. Oh yeah, that's right. 3 straight with 2 drivers. I forgot. Ty Gibbs lost it in 2020. Yes. Sammy Smith won it in 2021 and 2022. So, yeah, the Buck Boy. Thank you for that correction. I forgot Joe Gibbs. They almost had 4 straight. In 2020, they lost it by like 5 points because they had a crash in one race, and the 21 of Sam Mayer did not. Yeah, remember when Sam Mayer drove the 21? It feels like it was forever ago. And then the main series standings. Obviously, we know Jesse Love. He is your 2023 champion. I don't care what anyone says. It's over. 49-point lead. Frankie Muniz still holds second. So hopefully he can at least complete the season. Hopefully the sponsorship is found and he can complete the season. A second place finish in the point standings is still very impressive for him. He can market that for himself. I think that'd be very good. So hopefully Frankie can complete the rest of the year. Andres Perez de Lara, 3rd. Christian Rose, 4th. John Garrett's 5th. The next full-time driver is down in 8th, which is AJ Moyer. And then the last full-time driver is Brad Smith down in 10th, as Breidinger, Cosentino, and Jack Wood have all missed races, but are still classified as in the top 10. The real battle for the ARCA Series right now is the Owners' Championship. It got pretty ugly last year at Toledo, and I'm sure it'll get continued ugliness as we continue on. Joe Gibbs is 18 car, leads by just 2 points over the Billy Venturini 20 car. The other candidate was the Max Siegel 2 car, but due to their poor runs the last couple weeks, they have now fallen 27 points behind and are likely done for that Owners' Championship battle. As we know, it is the top 20 in the ARCA Menard Series that get a bonus at the end of the year on the Owners' Championship. So we have the cars, of course, that are on the A plan, which run at every race, the B plan, which run at most of the season, and then I don't know if there's a C plan, but there might be. And right now, that top 20, 19th is the 8 of John Core, 20th is the 69 of Bill Kimmel, and 21st is the 31 of Tim Goulet. Obviously, those cars are running part-time. Greg Van Alst's team, they plan to be back at Bristol, but right now I believe that's their only confirmed race. So I don't know if they'll stay in the top 20. But yes, obviously for the other teams of ARCA, that top 20 battle is definitely going to be one of the top battles to watch. So that was Iowa. Like I said, Iowa was a lot of fun. Wow, we spent 50 minutes just talking about Iowa. Yeah, it was a very fun day. And lots of fun to talk about. Fun battles coming up ahead. The E Series, their next combo race. Again, what's the next combo race? Is it IRP? Is that their next one? I think so. I want to say yes. I don't know where else it would be. I believe it is IRP. So, but we'll move on to now the second part of this live stream, ARCA at Pocono. Pocono has kind of been one of those weird tracks on the schedule that actually really fits the ARCA series. You'd think for a series that doesn't have the biggest car counts, they go to one of the bigger tracks on the circuit that you'd think the race would be boring. Contrary to the belief that the last couple of ARCA races that have happened at Pocono have actually turned out to be some of the better races of the year. I don't understand why we're starting the race so late. Last year, we had to shorten the race by 12 laps due to darkness, mainly because we started the race so damn late. And unfortunately, I fear that we're following into that exact same footsteps. We're starting the race at 6 p.m. on a Friday with a track that has no lights. What are we doing? Oh, I don't know why that's doing that, but yeah, 6 p.m. on a Friday. Not, in my opinion, not the best choice for that. We have 24 cars on the entry list, which is a pretty solid field, about average of what we get for Pocono, around 20 to about 30 cars. Again, our field sizes have not been where they were at the beginning of the year, unfortunately. In last year's race, last year's race, we had 28 cars for Pocono, so 24 is a come down, but still a solid field nonetheless. Still a solid field. Our entries are as follows: the 2 of Andres Perez de Lara, 38 of Shankor. Ed Pampa is back in the 10. Stephanie Moyer's back in the 11. Tim Monroe is in the 12. Dean Thompson returns to Venturini, this time in the 15. Connor Mosak returns to the 18. Jesse Love in the 20. Connor Jones moves over to the 25. Frankie Muniz with sponsorship in the 30. Christian Rose in the 32. Good old Brad in the 48. Tony back in the 55. Logan Misaraka in the Jeff Spraker entry in the 63 is in this race, so that's cool to see her back. John Garrett in 66. Scott Melton in 69. Cody Coughlin is 72. Andy J, the other pizza man, 73. The 75, Brian Dowsett. The truck team will be there as well. Chuck Buchanan, or Charles Buchanan, whichever you want to call him, in the 87. Glad to see them back. Jason Kitzmiller in the 97, and then our 0 entries, the 03 of Roger Carter, the 06 of AJ Moyer, and for some reason on the entry list, this is listed under Venturini, but Jake Finch is listed under 101, under Venturini. Doesn't really make sense to me why it's listed like that. I'm assuming it's just number 1. And it looks like this will be a Venturini entry, not from Phoenix Racing. So definitely oddball, but great to see Jake back nonetheless. Starting parks for this race, I actually only see pretty much one, and that's Tim Monroe in the 12. Other than that, I believe Stephanie, she always tries to go the whole distance. We know Ed will go the whole distance. We obviously know John will go the whole distance. Brad, he'll go the whole distance. And pretty much everybody else, AJ Moyer, Roger Carter, they'll go the whole distance as well. So, yeah, I think Tim Monroe is probably the only starting park. So we got 23 full race cars, which again should put on a decent show for us. Connor Mosak has not been the strongest guy in that 18 this season, so I definitely think this is one of the more open races of the year. Jesse Love, I believe, did he run this race last year? Looking at the race last year, and this race last year was won by Taylor Gray, so he's not in the field. Jesse Love was in this race last year, was in contention to win, but then got spun out. Then did get spun out, so that was that. It was a very weird race last year. I mean, again, last year's race, you just had to be there. It was weird. We had a lot of entries in this race last year that aren't here this year, so that kind of makes sense of the smaller entry list. So it's kind of hard to pick. Obviously, we know Jesse Love is going to be strong, but I still think this race is pretty wide open when it comes to who can actually win. Let's see here. If I'm going to go with a strong pick, I'll go ahead and go. I'm going to go with Dean Thompson as my winner's pick for this race. I think Dean, he's got more experience at Pocono than Jesse Love. He's been in there in a truck a couple times, so he's got more experience than Jesse Love. I would say it'd probably be between Dean Thompson, Connor Mosak, and Jesse Love, probably who's going to win the race. But I'm going to go with Dean Thompson as my winner. And my dark horse, I'm actually going to go with Connor Jones as my dark horse pick. So those are kind of my picks for that race. We'll go in through the payouts real quick. First place, $10,000. 24th place will pay $1,400. With all contingency awards, first place is $19,300. Second place is $10,400, and third is $63.50. Not $63.50, although it kind of feels like that. You can catch the race live Friday on FS1 at 6 p.m. Eastern. Now, I will not be watching this race live. Why? The IndyCar Series is coming to Iowa, and they're having their practice day on Friday at the Iowa Speedway. So I will not be watching the ARCA race live, as I will be at the Iowa Speedway once again watching the IndyCars. So if you're looking for me for live race tweets, unfortunately, I can't give them to you. So I apologize for that. But anytime they're racing at my home track, I got to go. So don't get mad at me for that. So anyway, guys, man, we've been here for 54 minutes. Jeez. But that was a fun weekend of racing at Iowa. Pocono should still be a fun race. Looking forward to the rest of the season. I hope we can get our car counts back on point. But obviously, a lot of teams have had to back out due to funding issues. It's that ever crappy word, funding. It's that one word that's affected racing since since ARCA and NASCAR's inception in the late 40s and early 50s. So nothing we can do about it. Just hope that the car counts will go up, but it's kind of a wait and see game if that makes sense. So yeah, hope you guys have a great weekend watching. Yeah, I usually do this on Thursday. It's only Tuesday, so I guess we have a great rest of your week. Great rest of your week. We will be live on Thursday with NASCAR Backmarker Battles, our review from New Hampshire, and our preview show for Pocono. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night and have a good rest of your week. I am going to get off of here and enjoy some dinner and the rest of my night as well. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. Again, like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that bell for notifications. We only got 2 likes. Let's get that number at least to about 20 likes. I'd like to get at least 20 likes on this podcast. So like the video, guys, please, so we can get this podcast out there more. And again, thank you guys for tuning in and enjoy the rest of your night. I've been Colby Evans, starting Park Car, and I'm signing off. So long, guys.